Hi everyone. Yeah, that's the house we're going to visit. And if you remember the tour description or you remember the previous tours, well, the name Fodor Schechtel has also been mentioned. Fodor Schechtel, for those who missed those tours. The recordings are available for my sponsors, and yesterday's last weekend tours recordings are finally available. It took me longer this time to share them, but they are all there on my website. So Fedor Schachtel is one of my favorite architects who mainly worked in Art Nouveau style, but he was so talented that he managed to put together very different styles and blend them and create something absolutely unique. And that's the house that's this house is also the example of this brilliant work of Fedor Schachtel. This is the photo after the restoration. I'm not sure which year, but that's definitely, well, maybe a couple of years ago. And it doesn't look like any Art Nouveau house, right? So we're used to thinking, okay, Fodor Schachtel is, it's Art Nouveau. It doesn't look like Art Nouveau. It looks like very much eclectic building. And yeah, actually, it is a very eclectic building, and it doesn't look like anything at all. And for what's inside is very different from what you see on the surface. Well, it belonged this plot of land and the house that was originally built here in the first half of the 19th century. It belonged to Vikula Morozov, the Vikulovici, let's put it like that. So the sons of Vikula, that's the branch of the family uh, that would be the owners of this plot of land. So Vikula Morozov, just like everyone else in the Morozov family, dealt with textiles. He owned several textile manufacturers in the suburbs of Moscow, and that's how he managed to earn enough money to build this house, as long as several other country houses in Moscow and its environs. Um, the interesting thing is that actually the plan for the building, the let's say the box, right, was built. Was designed not by Fedor Schachtel but Mikhail Chichagov, another architect who worked at approximately the same time. We're talking here 1870s. So in fact, Art Nouveau hadn't really come to Russia at that point. 1870s, there's still a time of eclecticism, of I would say experiments, and only later, Vikula Morozov decided to, well, the Vikulovici had this land uh, before, but Vikula Morozov, earning all that money, he decided to rebuild the the house. So Chichagov was in charge of the box, let's say, of the skeleton of the building, but what's inside, yeah, that's definitely Fedor Schachtel and an artist that we already know from the previous tours. Chichagov, however, I'm sure you've never heard about this architect, but that's okay. I would say he's a very Moscow architect, and it's interesting that in general, most of the architects that we've been discussing on my tours of St. Petersburg, they were not really familiar. Well, let's say in Moscow, they were not really famous in Moscow, and very few people heard of them. Yeah, the two capitals, they're not really far from each other, but those have always been and were, I would say, very different worlds. So that's one of the houses that Chichagov built. This is a neo-Russian style. By the way, the houses haven't been preserved the same way. You see them in the photos, and that's the restaurant Hermitage. It also looks different now, but this is I would say this is the typical house for the second half of the 19th century, 1860s, 1870s. This is the lane in Moscow where this house is built, the current one. the Morozov's house, there used to be a church. The church later on was taken down. Yes, but in fact, this family had nothing to do with this church because they were not just traditional, they were not just Orthodox Christians, they were old believers. And we will be talking when the time comes, we will be talking about it. Yeah, that's the Fyodor Shechtel, my favorite architect. So he was recommended, obviously, by other Morozovs to do the interior decoration. And for this work, Shetler was a good artist, and he designed everything himself. The designs of furniture, doorknobs, um, and well, handles, ventilation grids, and so on and so forth. So he was in charge of everything. But when it got to, let's say, um, ceiling decorations or wall decorations, he would be hiring someone else. And one of his favorite artists for this work would be Mikhail Rubel. And yes, we're going to see some Rubel as well. Um, I have been to this house myself once, and I will be sharing with you the story when the time comes. Luckily, I found out several months ago that unlike back, like say 5, 6, 7 years ago when I lived in Moscow, well, nowadays it's easy to visit this place. The tours are given every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and anyone can join. It's a group tour. You don't have to pay a fortune to visit it. You don't have to wait for the day of the national heritage. No, 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 no. It's just it's now in private hands. Basically, it's a big venue. It's like a holiday venue, event venue, and during weekdays, during the daytime, their tours are given there, group tours. So it's not really a problem to visit it now. And I only wish this had been possible during my time in Moscow, but nevertheless, I have been there myself. So um, the building looks very fresh after the restoration. And in fact, it's even a little bit disappointing indoors, inside, because some areas of the house look really brand new, as if they were built just yesterday, which, well, restoration is good. But when the restoration is too good, it's not too good, if you know what I mean. So that's probably the case, because it doesn't really feel like an old house anymore. In one room in particular, but I don't want to, let's say, spoil things for you. So it's not really like that. It's just that I wish it had looked a little bit older, maybe. But anyway, that's and again, it's the very first thing you're going to see is going to be nothing like you see over here. This is a very typical thing, by the way, for the houses back then, that obviously for any, even nowadays when we buy a house, we need also a place for our car, where our cars would park. Is there a garage? Is there anything? So this was the entrance for the cars. um Originally was the entrance for the carriages, but when Shechtel got down to it already, it was for cars, because at that time the Morozovs already had cars, and the house in general was built with the implementation of all state-of-the-art technologies, electricity, obviously, telephone, the ventilation system, the heating, uh, the pipes, everything. So 1879, this is when Chichago finished the facade works and everything, and then Shechtel got down to the decoration of the interiors. Um, well, that's quite interesting. So here you can see this element. This is the symbol of Hermes, right? Mercury, so the god of trade, right, and commerce. So back in the days, anyone just passing by this house could easily tell, well, oh yeah, this house belongs to a merchant, obviously. So Schachtel designed his houses and so that the house would always reflect the personality, the way of life, and well, let's say important, I would say, parts of life of the commissioners in the facades. But it's also important to remember that, but still in those times, it was really considered kind of a bad tone when uh, from the outside. Let's say when a house, when a very rich house looked too opulent from the outside, because it wasn't considered too modest. It wasn't really that humble. So uh, that's why we are going to be impressed with what is inside. But even the outside it looks nice. The entrance, however, now is not from the well, now we enter the house from the back entrance. Back in the days, obviously, then the all the guests would be entering through the main doors, but that's not the case, unfortunately. So we enter from the side, and the first thing we're going to see is the Egyptian lobby. And that's what I was talking about, the restoration. So right now the house is managed by a private company and they are renting it from the state at the cost of like 1 ruble. And the rent is for 49 years. That's the thing. But for this purpose, well, in exchange for this very, I would say, um, discounted, for this discount, the company had to cover the restoration costs, all 100% restoration costs, and that's it. And that's what I was talking about. Look at all these colors. It looks like it's a Play-Doh, actually. And if you take a closer look, you will see that these are not really the tiles. These is these are not tiles. They're not glazed even. This is plaster work decoration. Believe it or not, this is plaster and painted plaster. But to me, it looks like Play-Doh. It's because, well, Grisha liked to play with Play-Doh for a long time. So it looks very much like Play-Doh to me. Um, or like modeling clay, something like that. Why is it Egyptian hall? Well, because it was a big trend throughout Europe. Well, the Suez Canal, by the way, and the well, it opened Egypt to the world, and it wasn't really the first time the world went crazy about everything Egyptian. The first time was with Napoleonic Wars, right, and with Napoleon say in Egypt. That was the first iteration. That was the first hype around Egypt, and then another one. So they were already the second half of the 19th century, and well, maybe here you can see. Mm, I'm not sure that this is not actually tiles. It's more like ceiling and painting over it. Well, this let me share with you this. So when I was there, it was 9 years ago. This photo was taken about 9 years ago, a little less than that. Well, and you can see I'm holding something over there. So actually, this is me and Grisha, my son, that was really a month and a half old or something like that. And I was on maternity leave, and I was um, a bit bored, postpartum boredom. And well, I got contacted by the volunteers who worked with me on other projects. I volunteered in order to be able to get access to very inaccessible Moscow buildings, such as the embassies, the foreign affairs minister of foreign affairs, and the Morozov's castle. So and well, they told me, "Hey, Anna, would you like to join us and see the Morozov's house?" And I said, yes. So I just took Misha and Grisha with me. So that's me in the Egyptian lobby. And that was the second Egyptian lobby designed by Fedor Schachtel. Schachtel, as I said, he always liked to, I would say, follow the trend, to keep up with trends. And he also kept up with what the commissioners would tell him, what the clients would tell him. So the first Egyptian interior designed by Schachtel, and there's only two that have survived, or at least only two that we know of, at least. And the first one we saw together with you in the house of the Smirnov family. That's the Smirnov house. Exactly, these people who own this house would escape to the States after the revolution, and yes, they would exactly launch the Smirnov vodka brand. That's what they had been doing before the revolution here in Russia. Different alcoholic drinks, wines, um, infusions, and vodka. So, and they carried on after the revolution in the States. And yes, well, this is the same family. And that's the house that Fedor Schachtel designed from top to bottom, inside out. And in that house, we saw the Egyptian hall. It's a concert hall. This house is also used. I just would like to remind you that this house is also used as a venue, well, for different events. And this room is believed to have had and still it still has amazing acoustics. So Schachtel indeed tried to implement all technical advancement available just to make sure that the room will be the best for concerts. So, well, in our case, in the Morozov's house, it's only a lobby, an Egyptian lobby. And after that, you think you will be looking at more Egyptian interiors? No way. Absolutely not. So the next, well, the staircase is quite reserved. You can see it's uh, basically two colors and some decorations, but they, I would say, very, very minimal. The staircase itself is made from white marble. Obviously, there is no marble in Moscow, there's no marble in St. Petersburg, so this is the Italian marble. And having a marble staircase is already a big deal. But once you enter the upper floor, you will see another interior, a very different interior, decorated with frescoes. And these frescoes are not Egypt themed at all. They are the frescoes that the Morozov family asked Schachtel to place there. They asked Schachtel to come up with a design that would be reminiscent of the frescoes found in Pompeii, in Herculaneum, and well, elsewhere in Italy. And well, Schachtel did that with a little twist. But if you don't take, if you let's say if you don't really take a very close look at it, they will look very much like the Italian frescoes, and we can see them. Again, I only wish that the restoration hadn't really been that, I would say, diligent. It's, by the way, one may think that since it's a private venue and they are in charge and they cover all the restoration costs, one may think that they kind of, well, turn blind eye to some things and let the restoration, well, and let the restorers do their work and well, to speed them up and maybe do work not that diligently. No, that's not the case. They're controlled. Every step in the way, they are controlled and inspected and heavily fined in case something goes wrong. So I think you can see a more grotesque ornaments. And we have a photo. I found a photo, so that's what this room looked like. I remind you, we are on the upper floor, and you can see the abundance of vases, and also some glass um, glass cases. Well, the Morozov family, all the Morozovs were rich. They were business people, but they were also well-known art collectors. With this particular family, you, I'm sure, remember my tours on the Impressionists. So one of the Impressionists, sorry, one of the Morozov family members, we haven't seen his house, and I don't think we ever will, unfortunately, because it hasn't really been preserved in the same way. So one of the Morozovs was exactly in charge of amassing hundreds of works by Impressionists. And one of the Morozovs was a French Impressionist. Well, but this particular branch, the Vikulovich branch, they more dealt with Vikula and further on his descendants. They would mostly focus on porcelain, pottery, coins, and icons. And Vikula Morozov, whose photo we saw already, he used the upper floor to be his museum, just for museum purposes. He only lived on the ground floor. There are several rooms there. He didn't really need much. He didn't need much space. He didn't need too many rooms. And the upper floor, the several rooms that are here, they were used uh, for display of his porcelain, coin, and icons collection. And again, as you can see, the rooms don't look like Egyptian, they don't look Art Nouveau, they look very much just eclecticism. In fact, the the two rooms originally were designed to be concert rooms, one for concerts and the other one for dancing. Like concert hall, the white one was a concert room, and the blue or the green room. These are photos from the internet. Actually, I don't really have good photos of it. Well, this is the room, the dance hall. However, the it's not like Vikula Morozov never had concerts or never danced, but he preferred to use this for far more serious purposes. And here he exhibited his collection. I would say that the fireplace decorations here are nothing like, well, obviously Shachtel would have done it had it been his. I mean, it was his design, but the idea was to fit with what the client wanted. And since from the very beginning, Nikola Morozov had this vision to turn this place into a museum instead of the exhibition hall. He asked further Shachtel, well, not to overdo the design, so it would not really distract the eyes, from the exhibits. That's Vikula in his house, by the way. Not sure which room, but that's him. There are not so many photos of Vikula Morozov, unfortunately. And Alexei Vikulovich Morozov, so who was his son, he also contributed to that. Oh, that's him. Sorry. That was Alexei Vikulovich. Of course, it's a much later photograph, and they looked very much like they had very similar mustache. So that's Alexei Vikulovich. So he inherited everything from his father. Obviously, the money, obviously the all the business, so the several textile manufacturers and the entire collection. So he carried on with the collection. He carried on collecting, and he himself amassed quite a big deal of quite a great deal of items, mainly coins and icons. So by, let's say, by the times of the revolution, which yes, unfortunately, he 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 had to face in this house, he had about, um, let me calculate, about from 4 to 500 icons, and the oldest one would date back to the 13th century. So Russian icons, Orthodox icons. You know, this it's a very special market, a very different specific market with regards to, let's say, Orthodox icons, especially Russian icons. So here used to be exhibited, I would say, very rare icons. We're now leaving the upper floor and going back to the ground floor. And again, eclecticism is the word. So, unfortunately, there is no furniture. Just imagine what this dining room, well, would have looked like. Had it also had the furniture designed by the one and only Fedor Schachtel. This is the so-called Neo-Russian room, because Neo-Russian style was also quite common and popular at that time in the second half of the 19th century. It started off with the Emperor Nicholas I and would only its popularity would only grow bigger in the country. This is a very interesting design of the caisson ceiling. The caisson is a French word, right? Like a box or a drawer. And well, this is kind of a design of the ceiling, but we've seen it multiple times. It's not new, but these decorations here and here, the imitation of the wooden carving, and even like lace, is everywhere. And the idea was, since it's the Neo-Russian room, it had to some sort of remind us the of traditional Russian architecture and elements of the traditional Russian architecture. And one of the elements is definitely the wooden carvings on windows, doors, the shutters, the lintels, everything. But Schachtel decided to go further from it, and he actually placed this imitation. This is not wood. He decided to place this imitation of wooden decoration uh, everywhere in the room. And the fireplace. This is not um, tiles. These are not tiles. This is also plaster. Just plaster work, uh, hand painted. Uh, this is quite remarkable. Again, it was done. Look at the design also. So this is where the coals or the wood will be placed. I like the design here of this bird. So Schachtel, and that was Schachtel who designed also the door for the wood. It was all him. Unfortunately, there is no furniture here, and reason number one for it, because after the revolution, um, the collection of coins, porcelain, and everything was nationalized, as well as everything inside and outside and the house itself. It no longer belonged to Alexei Vikulovich Morozov, and it no longer belonged to any of the Morozovs. However, Morozov was able to prove to the new power, to the Bolsheviks, that the collection he and his father, his late father, had amassed um, was of a big importance for the country. And he was allowed to keep his collection in this house, and he was allowed to live in this house in one room and be the keeper, the curator, and the keeper of the collection. And for about a decade, Alexei Vikulovich Morozov, so the son of Vikulovich, was in charge of this museum. It no longer belonged to him. He was allowed to stay in one room in this house, but the house no longer belonged to him. And for about a decade, this place was the porcelain museum. Well, and then it closed down, and the exhibits were taken to other museums across the country, including the Hermitage, including the Pushkin Museum in Moscow, and different Soviet organizations would move in. And well, imagine what it was like working in such setting. So the most beautiful room in the entire place is clearly this Gothic drawing room. These are the photos you can find online. There are quite a bunch of them. And this is the room. And this is the good old Fodor Schachtel, right? So the idea was that every room in the house would be different. And that was the condition on which Schachtel was allowed to work. But obviously, Morozov wanted him to create some signature rooms, and that's the signature room. Is it exactly Art Nouveau? Not really. This is the neo. I would say this is the neo-Gothic style with elements again of some classicism here and there, a neoclassicism, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. That's Schachtel. And I remind you, sorry, that Mikhail Vrubel was asked to create several panels for this room, and he did that. These are the illustrations to Goethe's Faust. That's Vrubel himself. You may remember from my previous tours, or you may remember from my tours of the Russian Museum. There was one episode solely devoted to Vrubel's art, a whimsical art, very symbolic, very mysterious, and quite unique. So Schachtel knew that, Morozov knew that, and they liked it. However, the unfortunately, after several years of different Soviet organizations using this house, the frescoes, the original paintings did not survive. Those were canvases. They did not survive. So with the recent restoration, they were all restored and placed in the room, just as it used to be. These heads are, I would say, signature elements of Schachtel's design. You can remember it from the Dzerzhinskaya house. The tour recording is still available on my YouTube channel. Schachtel had a very good knowledge of history of architecture, and these different masks and faces, the uglier and the scarier, the better. They were used a lot in medieval architecture in Europe, and they were also meant to. They also had sort of pedagogical. Uh, um, well, pedagogical designation in a way, maybe a mission to show, let's say, some faces would be quite ugly and they would show people's vices. Some faces, Grisha, could you please turn it down? That's a little too loud. Thank you. And some faces would be super ugly. And whenever a person saw a mask like that, a face like that, they would immediately understand this is the face of a sinner. So normally this type of decorations will be placed on churches, and well, that's one of the elements that Schachtel definitely picked up from the medieval architecture. There's a lot of wood. The entire room is done in wood, and different kinds of wood, mostly oak. Sheffield liked to work with oak, and obviously his clients had enough money, so they could afford the best wood. And yeah, that's me, and a little teeny tiny Grisha. Grish, that's you. Do you want to see yourself? I don't think Grisha has ever seen these photos. This is you.
I don't see this photo.
You've never seen it? So this is you. You're like, I don't know, 7 weeks old here. Yes. So that was Grisha's first outing ever, I think. And the second outing for him, which would be already the proper exhibition, by the way, you'd never believe it. It would be Olympia of Edouard Manet. It was on tour in Moscow. This is one of the most scandalous artwork of the Impressionist period, right? The naked prostitute. I took my son to see it. And well, I was so proud of him. That's him in his baby carrier. He was sleeping all the way, and I had just enough time to enjoy myself in the interiors. And this is the stairs that take you to the library. This creature, Sheffield also designed all sorts of creatures. Um, it's kind of a dragon, fish, dog. I'm not entirely sure what this is. And Sheffield didn't really bother to explain. And if you go upstairs, you will actually see the library. So this is the library slash um, small exhibition room, especially for coins collection, but not only. So I was able to find another photo online. Look at this. I mean, you can see that everywhere there is something. Some I can't really see the coins, but what I can see is the old books that and manuscripts which Morozov also collected. I can't tell how many exactly of them there were, but you can see them now. A little bit of some foliants and books. Also the the private library, not the museum, but the library that Alexei Vikulovich inherited from his father, also numbered thousands of thousands of them in multiple languages because they were all very well educated and well traveled. And what we are actually missing here in this table, the middle section is absent here. There is a hole. And look, we're also missing the lamp, which ran on electricity, obviously. I know I totally forgot about the Q&A. I got carried away, but well, we're going to have a Q&A in the end. I hope you're okay with that. So this element, the entire metal frame and the lamp, unfortunately, we are missing. And this is an issue because Schachtel, who was also very reasonable. Yes, we know he knew his clients never really had any issues with the money and they were not really limited on funds, but he was very practical. He was a German, by the way. He wasn't Russian. He was from a German family that just moved in the 18th century to the territory of the Volga River. And uh, lower on the floor, there was like a milk glass section in the floor. And it led the light to the lower floor. So there was less light and less lamps and less electricity needed to light the lower room, to lighten the lower room, to light the lower room. So this is now missing, unfortunately, and yeah, obviously all the cases, all the bookcases are empty now. But the good thing that they're here, and do you know why these bookcases are still here? Because they were built in. Otherwise, all this would have been gone, just like everything else. All the other, all the other furniture is missing. We don't even know where it is. Nobody really bothered to explain where the furniture is. It was gone. Luckily, these elements survived again because they were all built in. The so as I said, the this is the designs by Mikhail Wrubel, right? And this is Faust himself. And according to the legend, Mikhail Wrubel actually used the face of Alexei Vikulovich, well, to portray Faust. It's just a legend. I don't know whether it's true. That's hard to tell. And yes, the stained glass designs. Schachtel was very good at it. Schachtel likes stained glass. Schachtel liked mosaic, but there's no mosaic in the house because we are not in our Nouveau period. We are in the neo-Gothic style rooms. So obviously, stained glass would be absolutely integral part of the design, and we can see that. And also another interesting, well, it's not a unique thing, but Sheffield was among the first ones in Moscow to do that. Again, you can see the ceiling decoration, and again this wooden box. They're creating something similar to the caissons, but in these niches between the box, he placed wallpaper. Well, it's the leather wallpaper, embossed leather uh, wallpaper. It's not exactly paper, leather, leather, I'm not sure. Anyway, um, the doors, the doorknobs, everything, everything, latches, handles, as I said, ventilation grids, everything, everything, even the key for the locks would be designed by Schachtel. But you can see these doors look quite different. This is not a neo-Gothic door. This is something else. Well, that's because there is another room, and this is, again, a new style. All of a sudden, you find yourself in the neo-Rococo room. Well, the legend has it that it was Alexei's wife that wanted the room to look different, you know. Um, and again, Art Nouveau hadn't really reached Russia at that point, and was like it was early 1880s when Schachtel was designing that. So it was just the reworking of the other styles. But I would say that I I think if need be, Alexei Vikulovich could have asked Schachtel to do the work all over again, and I'm sure Schachtel would have been happy to do that. Well, but that didn't happen, luckily. So the do you remember the library, right? With this hold on a second, with the glass. So with the glass in in the ceiling. So there is a, if you can you can see it in the mirror, and I will, well, there is a little bit in the video. So we are now exactly below, you can see over there. So we are now exactly below that library, and there is this element. This is not the original milled glass that had been there um, at times of Vikulovich. You can see it over here, Alexei Vikulovich. But so, and now there is a lamp. There was no lamp originally here, but now there is a lamp because the light is not enough, and because the table now has no opening, has no open section. Fortunately, unfortunately, at least we know. At least we now understand what it must have looked like. Um, So I also promised to tell you why Morozovs were so rich. In fact, it's not just even, so that's the scene I'm talking about. It's the only, I don't really have a good photo of that. So in fact, Morozovs, as I said, they were not, I would say, ordinary Russian family. They were old believers. Who are old believers? These are Orthodox Christians who, after the reforms that were carried out by Nikon, Patriarch Nikon, in 17th century, in 1600s, they uh, they disagreed with his reforms. They did not accept his reforms. Mainly the reforms uh, that were put forward by Nikon would deal with the, I would say, with the not really fundamental theological differences. They would just boil down to different practices. The way you cross yourself before Nikan, it was two fingers, but with Nikan, it was supposed to it would be the three fingers that then you would be crossing yourself. I mean, if you have to, obviously, and if you're Christian. Um, the way the prayers would be done, and more like I would say very much practical things rather than big theological issues that were raised. No, no, no. But there was these reforms were quite important to the country and to the Romanovs. And originally, well, it ignited, I would say, well, if not the civil war, obviously it was not the civil war, but it was, I would say, a big resistance movement to the reforms. And the those who did not accept the reforms, they would be considered the old believers, and they would be persecuted. They would be killed. They would be punished. They would be exiled. So eventually, many families decided to move outside of Moscow, deeper into the country, and form their communities there. And in this regards, as you're also looking at the decorations on the walls, this looks sometime to me the old believers communities that were formed, that were shaped, close knit communities, families, families being friends with other families like that, like-minded people. They would be protecting themselves. They would be isolated from the well, it's not that they would be completely isolated, but they would definitely be like running things differently. And the money that they would earn, they would amass, they would be spending within the family, and they would be investing in each other. And yeah, look at the grids, everything is all further shechtel. And to me, this looked very much similar to the Jewish communities. That also, um, because of the out, I would say the outer hostility, right, and persecution, they had to just keep close to themselves and develop within the group. And this is how the old believers' families would intermarry, and the money would also remain within these communities, plus the um, loyalty, honesty, reputation meant everything. So they were always known, the old believers were also known as very reliable and decent business people. So this is how, by late 19th century, those communities had already, I would say, amassed a great money. They already had given to their children good education. Most families would not even be allowed to study in public school, so it would be home education or education in Europe, and then they would come back. And then, unlike Jews, the big difference is, however, that old believers eventually would be allowed to live in Moscow. The difference would be that Jews were not allowed to live in Moscow for a long time, but the old believers would be, but they would just have to be very quiet about it, and they were not allowed to show their religious practices in public. So that's one of the reasons how not only the Morozovs, but also other old believers' families managed to. Um, this is how the other families, old believers' families, managed to become that rich. All these elements plus a little bit of luck, and again, because the money would always be within the families, and they would always be reliable partners. So that's how many managed to be this rich. And well, the Morozovs were just one of them. There are several branches of Morozov's family. So um, it would have taken me probably three more tours to tell you the story of the Morozovs and how they started. But this is one of the key reasons, one of the keys to their success in general. So that's why when I say the old believers, that's actually what it means. So in a way, they were sort of outcasts, but they in fact became, I would say, well, well, not the Tsars, but they actually ruled Moscow, in fact. But they did it very subtly. And before you go upstairs, this tiny old man, like like a wise man, is sitting here. And so the again, according to the story, this is Faust himself. Well, or could be Faust himself. And he's kind of guarding its way, or maybe just sitting and contemplating Ars Vita Long Brevis. It's uh, the open book. It's made. It's carved in this book. So it's exactly as you go to the library, right? So life short, art is what do you say? What do you how do you say it? Art is eternal, something like that. So and another room, which unfortunately has not survived, is this one. It's kind of a drawing room. Unfortunately, not all the rooms survived exactly due to the different Soviet organizations housed in this building. We only have a photo of that. Well, maybe someday. Who knows? Again, the fireplace, Schachtel's design. You can see that Schachtel liked to design fireplaces. Well, maybe that. Okay, so I think there's just enough time for a couple more picks. Luckily, so the friends that invited me told me about this tour. Well, they also were able to come. Luckily, their daughter was was much bigger, so it was easier. And that's me with Grisha. So be happy us. It was the first outing in those 6 weeks postpartum. Misha looks nice next to this mirror. And yeah, that's me. That's my selfie with Grisha in the same room. So this is it. Let me um, turn the chat on. So, and let me also check the schedule. So in 1 hour from now, I will be doing the next tour, which is the daily life of Russian aristocrats. Today we're focusing mainly on mid-19th century up until early 20th century, the final episode of the two. Um, Let me know if you have any question. The chat is on. Hi, Dolly. Good to see you. Sorry, I didn't see you join. Maybe you joined a little after. Hi, dear. So, um, there are. I wish there were more rooms to show. I wish there was some furniture to show. But are the shades of green original? Shades of green where exactly? Ah, okay, Dolly. That's fine. Could you specify, Maria? Some claim that the furniture, when the house became the Museum of Porcelain, that was the official name. Some claim that after the museum closed down and its collection was distributed among different museums, well, some claim that that the same happened to the furniture. Um, the color of the facade is green, but it looks to me that maybe the original color was a little bit different. That's really hard to tell because it's so fresh. Again, it's too well restored. Um, it looks brand new, only really really blank new, brand new. Can you please give links to the other talks, please? Oh yes, sure, Judith. That's what I normally do. Hi, Jan. Good to see you. So let me share with you the links. So I believe well, that's it could have been a bit different shades, um, but I don't really know because I really haven't seen it in any other colors, unfortunately. And for a long time, by the way, I remember that I would pass by this house quite often. It wasn't really far from where we lived in Moscow back then. So 10 years ago, we left in 2017. We moved to St. Petersburg. So it would be in scaffolding most of the time. So I even don't remember. When we came for that tour and I saw the house without the scaffolding, I was like, oh, that's what the house actually looks. Wow, good to know. So it was all a surprise to me, I would say very much. So I'm not sure whether, but again, the restoration what is definitely it was the scientific restoration, which meant they had to follow the original plans, the original color plan and everything. But there might be differences. Again, I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, Maria, I think there is some difference. Um, but maybe it's just because it's too fresh. Maybe in a couple of years, maybe in a couple decades, it will look more natural and I would say less brand new. So, dear all, let me remind you that so tonight we're also heading to Romanov Palace, Pavlovsk residence, to see the exhibition on the life of Russian aristocracy, mainly history of furniture and some interesting items from the collection, and to see what the dwellings would look like. Then I'm taking you on a final episode, the second and final episode on Russian immigrants in Finland, then Peter Paul Fortress. That's the fourth tour for tonight, and four tours tomorrow. Batumi Botanical Garden, the Belle Epoque, Batumi abandoned villas and hidden lobbies. Then Misha will be given a talk on the life of the Soviet political elite. And yeah, Ramparts Walk. So we will be walking now after several tours of, like, let's say, walking outside and around the walls of the old city of Jerusalem. Now we're going to be walking on the walls of, of Jerusalem. I would appreciate your support. You know, you can send me a PayPal donation. You could buy me a coffee. The links are also there on my website. You can find more tours scheduled for the upcoming weekend. And also, hold on a second, where is that? And the recordings. So what I promised to do, and it took me longer, but I managed. So the recordings of the previous weekend, including the obviously the cooking tour, it's all there on my YouTube channel, and the links on my website. Thank you so much. Just out of linguistic interest, what kind of name is Vikula? The etymology. Oh, it's an old Russian name. Old believers, right? So the old believers, they were very conservative and they prefer to give names to their children like the old names, old Russian names. Old believers, old ways, old prayers. And by the way, many of them, by the way, even completely let's say, denounce the figures of priests at all. So that's how I would say extreme they would be. They were different communities. It was quite complex within these all believers communities. There were many groups. So I would say it wasn't so homogeneous. But yeah, so the old names, it was something quite typical for the old believers. Absolutely, there were many names like that. Many. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Maria, for your questions. Thank you for your interest in my shows, in my tours. I will see you in 50 minutes from now on another tour, Russian aristocracy. Bye bye.